So like I say, there's been protests in this country around the globe. Iran has struck back in northern Iraq and Syria. The Houthis have sent a missile on a U.S. maritime ship, civilian ship. Didn't do much damage, apparently. But this is not, there's no, it's impossible at this point to even pretend that Biden's unfettered support for Israel is in the best interest of U.S. national security. Never mind the, I don't even have to talk about the sort of like the how morally reprehensible this is and how unjust and how ridiculous. There's an ex-Shin Bet head. I think we've mentioned this guy in the past. Amy Ayala, who says that this entire assault on Gaza is a waste. It's one thing to go in and try and decapitate the Hamas leadership, but what they're doing to civilians is a complete failure. He says, we Israelis will have security only when they, Palestinians, will have hope. That's the equation. To say the same in military language, you cannot deter anyone, a person or a group, if he believes he has nothing left to lose. He believes in releasing Marwan Bugatti. I've brought him up in the past. Bugatti has been in jail since 2002, following, I think it was the second Intifada. And he is the most popular Palestinian figure there, one who would beat both Abbas and Haniya, the Hamas leader, in an election. The Israelis, of course, want to put this guy in jail because they don't want a cohesive Palestinian political force. They don't want there to be a cohesive partner to negotiate with, because that undermines Israel's ability to dictate the terms. But it's the only way in which this is going to end, and people are going to get any type of security on either side. Here is John Kirby. With all of this said, and pressure mounting in the Senate, you remember Bernie Sanders introduced that 502B resolution from the Foreign Services Act, I think it is, the Foreign Affairs Act, that basically says if we're giving money to a foreign country, we need to get a report from the administration on how that money's being used, if it's being used in accordance with international law. And the administration does not want to have to engage in that, because then they'd have to admit that Israel is, at the very least, on a daily basis, engaged in war crimes. It is a war crime to starve a population. It is a war crime to prevent humanitarian aid to get in there. It is a war crime to do collective punishment. It is a war crime to target civilians in the way they have. And regardless if the minimum of 24,000 civilians that have been killed constitutes genocide in someone's mind, regardless if you think that there's been sufficient evidence of a desire to perform ethnic cleansing, whether it's, Israeli soldiers chanting our job is to cleanse, is to basically deport all of these people and drive them out of Gaza, or whether it's, finance ministers in the Israeli government or other high-placed officials. There have been war crimes here, without a doubt. Multiple war crimes. And the U.S. government is not interested in having to produce that document. So here is John Kirby I can't even watch this guy half the time, honestly. I just find him so
Sleazy.
sleazy. He is on with Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation. And we're seeing reporting of this, I think it was in Axios, that the U.S. is getting increasingly frustrated privately. I'll read that story in a bit, but here's Kirby.
As we acknowledged here, it's been 100 days since that Hamas attack on Israel that sparked where we are now. Does the U.S. need to press Israel harder to move into the low-intensity conflict they say they intend to move towards?
I can tell you, and Secretary Blinken just came from the region, that we have been talking to them intensely about a transition to low-intensity operations. We believe it's the right time for that transition, and we're talking to them about doing that. Now, they have done some precursory steps to try to kind of get to that point. They're pulling some troops out. They're relying a little less on airstrikes, but we believe that, look, any military campaign, you go through phases. And the next logical phase here, as they have put pressure on Hamas leadership, is to get to lower-intensity operations, more targeted, more precise raids. Less airstrikes. We believe it's time to make that transition, and we have had that conversation with them.
Time to make that transition because it's now a detriment to U.S. national security to be giving them cover for this long?
Because it's the right thing to do in this military campaign against Hamas. They have put pressure on leadership. They have gone after that leadership. They have been able to go after some of the resourcing and infrastructure that Hamas uses to conduct these attacks. We're not saying let your foot up off the gas completely and don't keep going after Hamas. It's still a viable threat. They have every right and responsibility to go after that. It's just that we believe the time is coming here very, very soon for a transition to this lower intensity phase.
Right.
The question was, should we be doing more to pressure them, not
Right.
be descriptive?
I mean, all the other stuff is just, but simultaneously, somebody's going to Axios. And this is the what they're trying to project. And it's unclear who this is for, because this is not nearly enough for people who care about the issue. And I don't know if they're trying to signal to the Israelis or they're trying to signal to the senators who are starting to say, like, we're going to condition aid, or we're not going to do aid whatsoever. Axios, President Biden and other senior U.S. officials are becoming increasingly frustrated with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his rejection of most of the administration's recent requests related to the war in Gaza. 4 U.S. officials with direct knowledge of the issue told Axios. Situation sucks and we're stuck. The president's patience is running out, one said. At every juncture, Netanyahu has given Biden the finger. This is Chris Van Hollen told Axios. He's a senator from Maryland. They're pleading with the Netanyahu coalition, but getting slapped in the face over and over again, as if there is no leverage here. Or as if they have tried, they've run out of things to do.
Also, like, Bibi's been giving the party the finger since before I had this job. Like, Netanyahu coming to talk to Congress because the Republicans wanted him there. Like, yeah, this is what they do. That finger's been extended for a decade.
It really is. This is either, and they're not mutually exclusive. This is both a twisted ideological stance by the administration and an abject failure of exerting U.S. soft power. There's just no way. This is just a failure. Biden hasn't spoken to Netanyahu in 20 days since a December 23rd call in which a frustrated Biden ended with the words, "This conversation is over." And Netanyahu, I imagine, was like, okay, just send the money. Before Biden hung up, Netanyahu had rejected his request that Israel release the Palestinian tax revenues it's withholding. It's Smotrach that is holding those. Same guy who basically says we're going to have all these people self-deport. Biden and his advisors, in addition to the tax revenue, believe Israel isn't doing enough to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. They're also frustrated by Netanyahu's unwillingness to seriously discuss plans for the day after the war and his rejection of the U.S. plan for a reformed Palestinian Authority. U.S. officials are now growing increasingly concerned that Israel won't meet its timetable to transition And if Israel doesn't significantly scale down its operations in Gaza, there's no timeline here. It will likely become increasingly difficult for Biden to maintain the same level of support for Israel's military campaign. Like, who is this for? Like, what is the fear that the Biden administration has in tiptoeing around? I mean, and I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt that that's what it is, as opposed to just their ideological relentlessness. But like either they recognize the political cost and the cost of basically the U.S. national security interests, or they don't. And if they do, then why are they tiptoeing around like this? And if they don't, why bother leaking this stuff to Axios? It's just so poorly done. And again, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. It's just so poorly done on both sides.